Hello, our dear listeners, and welcome to the webinar Software Development Project. Will just one testing type suffice? Hosted by QATestLab and Buitech. My name is Liudmyla Potyomkina, and I'm Program Manager in QATestLab. Today, I'll tell you about the theoretical aspects of software testing within one project. And Wyn H Devonald, a Global Operation Director and founder at Buitech, will show how to apply theory in practice on the example of the project. Thanks for joining us today. There are more than 100 testing types. All of them are called to verify software quality and help to improve it. But in the majority of cases, there is only one software project with fixed release date and predetermined budget. With what software aspects to test it first? Does functional testing have a top priority? Or is the verification of system security the most important? Do the omissions of user's interface or usability testing affect the software quality? And what testing types will guarantee a high-quality product? For a testing stage, a shot in the dark is not accessible. The choice of testing types, as well as their number, should base on a thorough analysis of software parameters. They can be divided into internal and external ones. External parameters are not closely related to the project specifics. A company or organization defines them. External parameters include the analysis of target market, specifics of target location, and users' needs and expectations, customers' requirements, allocated project budget, project schedule, time frame, risk assessment, and management. The specified external parameters give the basis for the determination of the internal ones. Internal parameters include a type of software under development, software requirements, development model to apply, available and required development resources, objectives of testing stage, skills and competence of testing team, available and required testing infrastructure including tools and frameworks. The choice of required testing types is closely connected with the specifics of the software product. Be it online store, website, game, mobile application, corresponding testing techniques should be applied, as every software product has its own features, user scenarios, and functional purposes. For example, for e-commerce solutions, strong security and proper functioning are very important. Improper order processing and issues with payment options will cause a negative user experience. Besides, load capacities also are critical for e-commerce solutions, especially during such days as Black Friday or holiday seasons. Security is also important for digital wallets and banking solutions. For games, security functional is not so important as graphical user interface is critical. The determination of most critical aspects and parameters of software product helps to single out required testing types and to prioritize them. To ensure effectiveness of testing activities, they should base on a project specification. that includes the outline requirements for system architecture, its capacities, functional and business logic. Fixed software requirements optimize the testers' work, as they won't have to specify a system behavior by applying to a development team every time. Testers will evaluate software quality based on available project specification. A development model to be applied defines the specifics of every project stage, including the testing one. Also, the type of dev model determines at what stage of software development testing activities will be conducted. For example, for a waterfall model, a testing stage comes after the development one. But in the agile methodology is applied, then every sprint includes a testing stage. Besides, quite different testing techniques should be applied. A proper distribution and planning of processes and responsibilities will ensure a high productivity of project team and wise use of time and resources. Clearly defined test objectives predetermine the effectiveness of a QA stage. They are the basis for testing techniques and approaches to select and apply. If testing is called only to make sure that software is able to perform common actions according to typical use cases, then a full end-to-end testing will be extra. Also, test objectives help to define the scope of testing, thus plan and schedule QA activities. But quite often, it turns out that the QA team has neither skills required for testing nor equipment to ensure thorough testing. If a team doesn't have a skill set that matches the testing techniques to be used, then testing can go in a wrong direction, and the team will get improper results of software quality. Also, a limited test infrastructure will not help to ensure a thorough verification of system compatibility. And in this case, emulator or simulation system will not provide correct results. In some cases, a project budget can draw boundaries for a testing stage as well as the development one. A testing budget defines the size of testing team, number of tools and frameworks. Also, a testing budget determines whether test automation engineers will be hired and whether any test automation tools will be used. The analysis of potential risks should be made on the basis of specified development and testing resources, objectives of testing stage, and determined specifics of software development life cycle. It will help to avoid difficulties and to ensure a smooth workflow. Risks can be connected with the size of testing team, testing equipment, priority of detected bugs, and specifics of their fixing, and so on. So, in order to provide the end users as well as the customers with a high-quality software, a proper number and types of software testing should be selected. The choice should base on a number of parameters, including a development model, available development and testing resources, testing skills set, project schedule, and budget. And now, Wyn, a Global Operation Director and founder at Buitech, will show how this works in practice. So, Wyn, I'll give you the word.
Hi, I'm Wyn Devonald, Global Operations Director at Buitech, and I'm going to talk about one example of a project here and how we put that theory into practice. As most projects differ from each other, so does the type of testing required to prove the end result is going to be fit for purpose. As you heard from Liudmyla earlier in the session, there are a vast number of different types of testing that can be applied to any given project, and it's just figuring out which is or which are the most appropriate. The project I will talk about took place around about 2.5 years ago. It was a website that was being launched alongside a TV advertisement for a well-known global company for a product they were newly launching in South America. I've got to point out that there were multiple companies involved in the program, not just the digital agency that had hired our services, which meant that there were numerous external dependencies associated to it. And these are just the worst type of dependencies for any project. So if they're not managed right, it would be a big factor in deciding if the project's a success or not. How to determine which test types are appropriate for a project. Gather as much information about the project that you can. For example, deadlines, as mentioned earlier, any external influences, client requirements, what documentation is available, use cases, storyboards, wireframes. Identify what's mandatory and what's nice to have. Don't forget to get the contract details of all parties involved, phone, email, or any other comms method that they use, Viber, WhatsApp, Skype, etc. It's only once that you have this information can you make an informed choice. For this project, we received the requirements in the form of a storyboard with annotated notes. The site was to be fully interactive, and once you gained access into the living room by the main door keyhole, you could move from room to room guided by hint arrows. You could choose to interact with the character clothes or not, view the TV commercial, the downloadable comic strips, colouring books, character images and bios. You could view the conversations between the characters and speed up those conversations by selecting the speech bubbles. And whilst you're still in the house, navigation between the rooms and the floors was always via a backwards or forwards hint arrow. Once you gained access to the utility room, you could order a product sample. You could purchase one of the products. These would actually bring up a secondary overlay, which would capture all the user details, name, shipping address, etc. And if you were actually doing a purchase, it was the same details, just an additional payment details added to that. You could also view the provider's other products, not just the product that they were launching here. This was to be viewed on a new tab alongside any social media sites relating to that product. We followed up with a conference call 2 days later. It was the earliest opportunity that our client was available. Here we identified that the target platforms were Windows 7, 8.1, Mac OS, iOS, and Android. Windows 10 was being launched just prior to the advertising, and if time permitted, we should run the website on Windows 10 beta. The main browsers they wanted to test were Chrome, Firefox, IE9, IE10, IE11, Safari. all on the latest versions plus minus one. Here we questioned whether Samsung's own browser should be included, and we were told that this wasn't a requirement. Mobile devices, phones and tablets. Only information that they added was that the completed product had to work with Retina displays. The character movement had to be fluid. I had to move smoothly without jerking. The final product would be in Spanish, with the interim releases in English. And the target end date to supply to the end client was 13 man days away. And the software would not be available to us for a further 2 days. Now we had a fairly complete set of requirements from a testing perspective, albeit quite late from the project perspective. We could get down to some serious planning. So, what test types do we apply here? The summary requirements I just went over sounded to be quite a lot. Of course, the obvious ones, functional, compatibility, and performance. Functional, it goes without saying, yeah? The ability to be able to move from room to room once inside the house, the ability to view the TV commercial, the interaction between the characters, the ability to download the assets, the comic strips, the colouring book, the character images and bios, the ability to order samples or purchase the product, and review the end client's products. Also on their the product manufacturer's website and on their social media sites. Compatibility, again, it goes without saying, it's stated that multiple platforms and devices should be tested. Performance, they stated that the site had to work well on Retina displays and that the character movement had to be fluid. Work on 3G, Wi-Fi and Ethernet. Maybe the not so obvious ones. Usability. Would navigation around the site be intuitive enough? The comic strips and the colouring books indicate that they're also targeting the younger audience as well as the adults. There's nothing better than having your child pressure you into buying something, is there? Security. Capturing people's personal details, especially financial transactions, means that the site is a target for the unscrupulous hackers out there. Regression. No way that the site would be bug-free first time round. Multiple iterations are going to be required. Therefore, regression's got to be a must. Especially to prove no further bugs are being introduced as a result of another bug being corrected. Risk-based. Prioritise. Do all the devices, platforms and browsers have to be tested? Looking at the target audience demographics will help, as well as discussing this with the end client. After completing our planning, which is 24 hours later, we sent the proposal back to the agency that had hired us. This was followed up by a further conference call the following day. The initial reaction from them was, wow, we weren't expecting that. This is an example here of our calculation. Don't worry if you can't see it clearly. I'll summarise on the figures. Our proposal came in at 275 hours, 34.5 man days testing to do a thorough job. To our mind, we had covered all the requirements, and after quite a bit of discussion and some guidance on our part, we arrived at an agreed 142 hours. 17.75 man days. So now you're going to ask how we basically halved our original effort, still managed to give our client the confidence that they're going to get a near bug-free site. By the way, no professional tester is going to put hand on heart and say they that the site they've tested or the system they've tested is totally bug-free. So, being thorough versus being practical. Our biggest constraint here was time. We basically took a risk-based approach. This covered functional. The requirements stated we should test on the following platforms: iOS, Android, Mac OS, Windows 7, Windows 8.1 and Windows 10 Beta. By dropping Windows 7 and Windows 10, this saved 5.5 man days. The reasoning behind that was Windows 8.1 had been out since October 13. We were testing late June 15. And as Windows 10 wasn't due to launch until July 15, with the TV advertisement and website being launched the first week of August 15. The risk here was determined to be a medium. Compatibility. The requirements stated that we should test on the following browsers: Safari, Chrome, Firefox, i.e. 9, 10, 11, all on the latest versions, plus -1. And only if time permitted should we include the beta version of Edge. By dropping Windows 7, i.e. 9 disappeared, as it was not supported on 8.1. And by dropping Windows 10, Beta, Edge also disappeared. From our client's perspective, this was still not enough of a saving, so they told us to only test on the latest browser versions and to also drop i.e. 10. This saved nearly 6 man days. Here the reasoning was most people keep the browsers up to date, and as Windows 8.1 shipped with i.e. 11, as the client had also dropped Windows 7, it was decided to drop i.e. 10. Again, the risk here was deemed to be medium. The requirement stated that we should focus on the Retina displays. In our proposal, we included the iPhone 4S, the 5S, the 6, the iPad 4 and the MacBook Pro, as these are all Retina displays. Our client suggested we drop the 4S. This saved nearly 2 man days. Their reasoning: the iPhone 5 was launched in September 13, nearly 2 years after the iPhone 4S, and most people, they reckoned, would have upgraded. Again, the risk associated to this was medium. Performance. Although it wasn't a stated requirement, we included performance in our proposal due to the specified Retina displays and the use of the words character movement had to be fluid, and also the use of 3G. This was an accepted test type. So here the risk was no risk. The ones that they discounted, even though we did not specifically add usability to our proposal due to the large number of days already proposed, we'd still discussed whether we took a formal approach to usability or an informal. They opted to go with the informal and its lose its scent, i.e. no specific usability testing to be conducted, as they did not have the time and the budget available. The risk here was deemed to be medium. And again, although it wasn't a requirement, in our proposal we'd included security testing of the website due to its ability to capture the user personal details and their financial transactions. This was dropped, saving 4 man days. The reasoning here was our client recognised our concerns but felt that the risk was minimal as a third-party plugin was being used to capture these details, and they felt that it was the plugin supplier's responsibility. The risk here they deemed to be low. I've got to point out here that the risk profile attributed was not wholly accepted by ourselves. To do a proper risk assessment, you need as much pertinent information available as possible. So, what was the end result? We did successfully complete all the testing we agreed upon within the time frame. Total test effort of 145 hours against the agreed 142. The additional hours related to performance. I won't go into the specifics regarding the number of bugs identified, but will say that 97% of the bugs and comments raised were successfully fixed or addressed, and the end client accepted the software. A follow-up conversation 3 months later with our client informed us that the end client's promotion was deemed a success. One point here I'd like to bring to your attention relates to the change of language on the final iteration. The conversation between the characters were presented with the use of speech bubbles. These were originally sized according to the wording content in English. Had we not focused on those conversations during the final iteration, some of the Spanish wording would have been truncated. So, lessons learned. Always prioritize. Even if you don't take a risk-based approach, it's always worth prioritizing. What are the most important aspects? In any given project, any project I've ever worked on, time has always been one of the biggest factors. The same meaning in one language as opposed to another can mean the content of may not fit inside the space provided for it. If you take a risk-based approach, ensure you gather as much relevant information as possible and score that risk based on the information, not on an individual's take. And most important, involve testing at the outset. Don't leave it until the last minute. And finally, ensure you have sufficient budget available. Thank you for taking the time to listen to our webinar. We hope you found it of some use. I'll hand back to Liudmyla and bye from now. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Wyn. That was really interesting to hear about the types of testing and practice. And we have some questions from our listeners. First question is, how do you think can we implement the testing automation if our developers conduct testing themselves? Good question. Actually, it's a good idea to perform testing, but if it's done by developers, it can cover only one side because of their own view to the project. And so, first of all, I recommend you to do at least one iteration of manual testing to understand the weaknesses and strength of the project, and after that you could choose the most stable part of the system and those parts you are not planning to change, and start to automate it. If you have no time to find and coach QA engineers, just use independent testing company. Wyn, what do you think? Can we implement the testing automation if our developers conduct testing themselves?
Yes, of course, but you've got to remember here, a developer's mindset is, how do we build it? A tester's mindset is, how do we break it? So you've got totally opposite mindsets. Yeah, a developer will, especially because he's close to the project, he's going to be thinking with only that one mindset. He might do a very good job at automating the actual testing, but is he going to think enough outside the box, is he going to be thinking, how do I break this? I'm going to find every single way I can, or every single way I know about breaking this piece of software. To my mind, he's not going to be able to do such a thorough job as a tester would. Whether that's an in-house tester or a tester that you employ from an agency like QATestLab or from ourselves. Does that answer your question?
I hope so. Thank you, Wyn. We agree with you. And we have one more question about what programming language is good for test automation. Wyn, at first I could give you the word and answer to this question. What do you think about programming language for test automation?
It depends. It depends. It depends basically on how much budget there's available. There's a lot of proprietary tools out there that you can pay an arm and a leg for. But there's also a lot of good open source tools out there. In-house at Buitech, we offer the proprietary tools, but we also offer Selenium as the open source option.
Mm-hmm.
So it basically comes down to budget. How can I say? If it's the budget's open-ended, a lot of the larger clients, they would prefer to go down the proprietary route. Now, this is the same sort of mentality, to my mind, as paying an arm and a leg for a huge consultancy as opposed to a smaller consultancy. It is down to individual choice and budget. I certainly won't knock either. Yeah, the proprietary tool set or the open source tool set, they both do the same job. One just costs a lot more than the other.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much.
I was just going to add, there are an awful lot of testers now that are going more down the open source route because there seems to be more work in that area. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you so much for really that's really interesting, and you're correct that it depends on the budget because there are a lot of automation testing tools and frameworks. And if we're talking about programming languages, from our experience, it doesn't matter what programming language you choose. It could be Java, C#, JavaScript, Python. From our experience, a lot of projects, a lot of clients depends on these programming languages from the developers. Yep, you could use the language your developers are familiar with. From our side, we recommend Java as the most popular programming language for test automation. I see that there is no more questions, so thank you, our dear listeners. Thank you very much, Wyn, for your time and for sharing your experience. Thank you so much, and have a nice day for everyone.